Hello and welcome to another video, and today we're in one of my favourite places to visit in the UK, not the Lake District, but in Christchurch in Dorset. So that's like the south coast of England. Love the place. You've got the New Forest just up there, and obviously you can just drive from the New Forest down to Christchurch in a matter of sort of like 30 minutes. So it's just a lovely place to go and visit. Loads and loads of history. You've got actually I'll say it's the coastline. Most of it around there is the inlets and the boating club. So, but no, it is a beautiful place to go. Most of the time I've been there, it's actually been in like the autumn time. So a lot of it is the autumn colours going through the New Forest, and you come down to Christchurch and you've got all the little rivers that run through it. And it's a very picturesque little town. I say little town, it's actually got a lot of history. And we're going to be digging into that history today, with obviously the paranormal in mind. And time slip could be a time slip. I think you can either take it as a time slip or take it as a ghost, but people argue over it. So it is recorded as a time slip. I think it could be more of a ghost, but we've also got monks, we've got smugglers, and we've got ducking stools. So it's going to be an interesting one. And again, before we start, just want to say thank you to everyone for your support and for the subscriptions. We're now on 10,200, which is absolutely brilliant. Ironically, my views have gone down a little bit. I don't know why that is. Perhaps it's not enough time slip videos, and I know the Cursey ones that went really well, 60,000 views. But my last few videos have been struggling to hit sort of like 2,000 views, so I'm going to say it is what it is. I hate that. I can't say it is what it is. I don't know what that is, but again, thank you for your support. And don't forget, if you subscribe, you can put your notifications to all so you don't miss any episodes. So with that in mind, let's go on to the next video. Okay, so a little bit of history on Christchurch. It was founded in 650, and the church you see there today, which is the Priory, was built in 1094. Now, it's actually the longest parish church in the country, and we call it the Priory because it was a priory. Around that churchyard you had extra buildings that was maintained by monks. We had all the normal facilities that monks would need. As you know, when Henry VIII came in, he got rid of all the monasteries, and this started to fall into ruin, which is why there's not much there now. A lot of the stone from that went round to build other buildings around the town. The area itself is haunted by quite a lot of characters, and it's been a little bit trying to pick the ones that I want to put into this video, and I'm going to stick to the ones that may not be the most well-known ghost stories. On the other hand, they also may be some of the well-known ghost stories. Depends who you ask. If you go on the ghost walks around there, they do come up in them, but not always. I think these are quite the most interesting ghost stories, and we are mainly focusing on just a few little areas of Christchurch. We're not going to about the theatre and all these other places that are haunted. We're leaving out quite a few of the pubs. We are looking at a few streets, a old castle ruin, and mainly the church itself. So, and that's about enough. There's a lot there to get through, and you know, I try to keep these videos around about 30 minutes, so I think that holds your interest for that length of time. Anyway, I'm going to try not to waffle on about toilet taps and all that in this one. So let's get to some of the ghost stories. So as you head to the church, the Priory, you will first see the remains of the Great Tower. Now, this was built around about 1104, and believe it or not, it came into its own, not just then, but also during the Civil War in the 1600s. So it had quite a long history, and again, it proved absolutely unpenetrable. People could not get into this castle. The downfall of it was probably age, really, where things started to fall apart. But around it, you'd have the big moat. Now, this is where we get our first paranormal event that people speak about a lot. Christchurch was a royalist town, and you had the royalist army all around there during the Civil War. What is said to happen is that the ghosts of royalist soldiers are seen around that castle. Now this site, I'm really sure that it'd be quite easy for people's imagination to carry it away with them. They go there, they're reading all the history, they're on the plaques there, and yeah, things can play in your mind. As I say before, if you tell someone a house is haunted, then put them in there, everything they hear, they're going to put down to a ghost. Which is why it's important that the person that reports this event isn't new to that area and knows the history of that place, isn't put off by anything, isn't bewildered by the history of it. It's just a part of their day-to-day life, and somewhere where they walk with their dog all the time that has never had any reaction to this site before. And that's important to know, to put into context what happens to them. So this is a strange one. In the summer of 1977, an elderly gentleman who was born and lived and worked in that town all his life is walking through the area with his dog. Just a normal daily dog walk. It's getting to sort of like dusk, but it's a very warm evening. He's walking along with his dog. He's throwing his dog a ball. The dog runs off, picks the ball up, comes back to the gentleman. Nothing unusual. They're walking past the ruins of the castle. The gentleman throws the ball. The dog runs off to get the ball, and he can't see the dog. He's calling for the dog, and nothing. Just absolute dead silent. This isn't like his dog. His dog will always come back within seconds. He carries on walking around the bend and comes into the view the other part of the castle ruins. Now this is the pathway that goes around it. As I say, this would probably be the beginning or the bank of the moat beforehand. As he gets round to the side, he describes a scene that people have taken as a time slip. What he sees is two royalist soldiers bending down, stroking the dog. He also claims that at that point of time, where he is standing, there is a big moat going around him, and he is on the edge of that moat. I guess this is why people put this into the time slip, because the environment around him has changed. The dog sees him and runs back towards him. The two royalist soldiers stand up and look at the gentleman and smile. Again, that would put him for an interaction. The gentleman is actually sort of like dumbfounded. He said he was frozen solid. He could not work out what was going on. He turned around to look at it again to make sure he was correct in looking at the moat, but as he turned around, the moat had actually gone and he was back to the grass and the fence, and he looked back and the royalist soldiers had gone and the banks of that moat were just back to normal. So again, you're pointing into all this sort of stuff that would claim it as a time slip. Other people I've heard try to say that this is a ghost. I don't know. I think you've got to take it. As I said before, the premises we set out is the environment around this changes, so we call that a time slip. Other people do mix this up with another ghost report there of a army soldier. We don't know if this army soldier is from the Civil War because he doesn't have any weapons apart from a spear, which is okay, but the description of his clothing isn't helpful neither. So around about the same year, in 1977, two council workers are walking through the area and they're coming along to cut the grass. They've started off at one end of the hill and the other one started off at the other end of the hill. One started off on one side of the hill while the other one starts off on one side of the hill while the other one starts on the first side of the hill. And they're working round. It's a circular thing. One side, a circle don't really have a side unless you flip it. My description's terrible. But one was over there and one was there. And they're working round clockwise to cut the whole of that mound, keep, tower, whatever you want to call it. Not important. They're cutting the grass. When one of them lets out a shout, which in their statement they go to great lengths to say it wasn't a scream, the other worker hears a shout. He runs round to see his friend because he thinks he might have got hurt or something like that. And his friend is standing there And he says, "I've just seen a ghost." And his friend goes, "What do you mean you've seen a ghost?" He goes, "I'm standing here." He goes, "I'm trimming. I look up and stand at the top of that mound. There's a soldier with a spear pointing his spear down to me. He's wearing like a sack clothing, completely unshaven, looked really scruffy." He goes, "But within seconds of me spotting him, he vanished." With that, the friend runs up the stairs and on top of the mound, walks around the ruins, looking down to see if he can see anyone around. In his mind, he thinks somebody's up there just having a joke with his mate. He walks around, he can't see nothing. Now also, from that vantage point, you can see the entrance and the exit, and they are the only points of, actually they may not have been back then, but they are today, the only points of entrance and exit to that ground. I know this because I tried to get over to the other side of the Priory where the old Norman house is, and I kept going round and round in circles and I couldn't find the gate for it. But there's only two ways of getting into that place, and that's from that entrance and the other entrance. So there's no way that this figure could have got out of that area without being seen. So this figure is seen repeatedly over a number of years, and it's always the same sort of description. They're wearing like a sack type clothing and with a spear in hand. Sometimes he's seen with a helmet, sometimes he hasn't got a helmet on. So again, the sightings change a little bit, but mostly they fall into line with it being the same person. One of the other interesting interactions this figure has is actually with a lady who sees herself as a medium, clairvoyant type of person. Now, I don't know if she was there looking for this person particularly, but she's gone up onto that mound. She's up there and she's set an easel up and she's painting the picture of the tower. As you do when you're painting looking up. At one point, she looks up to see this figure of this man holding a spear standing in the gap of the ruins. Now, she looks back down to carry on painting, and only then does it register that she just sees this figure of this man standing there. She looks back up and he's gone. First of all, she puts it down to her imagination. She's sitting there and sort of like getting to the mindset of what this place might have looked like, and all that sort of like in the environment, and like indulging herself into that time period. So she thinks she's overthinking it. She carries on for about another 20 minutes. And the same thing happens again. She looks up, but this time when she sees the figure, she keeps her focus on him and gives us the best description of this gentleman so far. She describes him as only around about 5'5", with dirty blondish hair, blue eyes, unshaven. The clothes are, yes, like a sack type clothing. They're coloured but slightly faded yellow and blue. And the spear shaft has got carvings around the edge of it. She said this person stayed there for about 30 seconds before fading away. Surprisingly, this didn't put a chill through her. She wasn't shocked by this, she wasn't scared by this. She took it all in her stride, and accepting that she is a medium, spiritualist, clairvoyant, she felt that this person had chosen to show himself to her. There's a lot of reports like that, and I've not personally spoken to those people, but on that day we went up to the church and we went up onto the museum floor of the church, which is the Loft, and the person up there, I've spoke about him before. He knew about the Raggedy School in London and we was talking about it, and I'll talk about that a bit more later on, but he was the tour guide up in that Loft area. And as I said, he is a medium, but he'd recently been on a ghost tour around the area and doing sort of like investigations. What got him interested in it was years ago he said that he had been walking through that castle when he himself see the figure of a soldier standing at the top of that hill looking down holding a spear in his hands. And in my conversation with him, I sort of like, I got a feeling that yeah, he had really seen this. This is what he believed he had seen. And there was other things he put into place about that loft that we'll go into later on. I keep saying later on, but we will cover it. And I said to him, like, how often are these figures seen around the mound? And he said it is very often. Even in the recent months, people have reported seeing these figures of soldiers up on that hill. What I'm confused about is that this was a unconquered tower. Now, I'm guessing some deaths may have happened in the tower, but most of them would have happened outside the moat area, because people never managed to break into it. So are they loyalists? Are they more of a older 12th century invasion? Is it? Now, this place was attacked quite a few times. We haven't really got a proper time frame from where these spirits or ghosts could be from. Okay, so this one I did enjoy. This is the ducking stool and the ducking stool lane. For years I've turned around and said that ducking stools weren't used for witchcraft, and they were mainly used for keeping people in order that have misbehaved. And, you know, not being politically incorrect and all that sort of stuff, but they were mainly used for women. And if your wife was doing something wrong, if she had an affair, or if she'd been caught stealing or anything like that, or she'd just bring down your family name, people would put them in the ducking stool until they promised to behave better. The ducking stool at the end of Ducking Stool Lane was there from around about the 1300s. I think, I don't know, when was it? It was first registered there in May 1350. So it's got a lot of history on it, and it's probably ducked a lot of people. I say mainly for women who are found guilty of verbal abuse, brawling in the street, all these sort of weird events. I'll put a photo up here. It does describe it a little bit better. It describes it a lot better than what I do anyway. But Ducking Stool Lane and the ducking stool is said to be haunted. Now, we're not too sure that the ducking stool is in exactly the correct position, but we know it was in that area. I mean, it was on that street, and it was at the end of that creek. Maybe just maybe a few foot that way or a few foot that way. But the replica they've got there is absolutely perfect. So in recent ghost walks around the area, you'll be told of the screaming sound that comes from the ducking stool, and the sounds of women crying and sobbing. Yeah, generally the run-of-the-mill sort of stuff. But there is one report that actually terrifies people who ever see it. And it happens around about 10 o'clock at night. That people are walking just normally down that street. They hear sort of like the sound of someone being dragged over cobbles. They look round, they can't see anything. They hear a woman's voice shouting out, "Help me, help me." They look round again and there's nothing there. Then they hear the sound of splashing. Now, people think that, of course, there's only one stream at the bottom of that road. As they walk down to the bottom of that road, they start getting a fear coming through their body, as if they're walking into danger. They get near the ducking stool, and again they can hear the screams of somebody in the water, very much like what has been said beforehand. Then they start feeling the presence of a lot of people behind them, but when they turn around, there's nobody there. But they also get this feeling of being watched by hundreds of people. It is very possible that this is a energy that's been built up, that yes, this would happen. These duckings would be watched by most of the town. Most of the townspeople would come out to watch this woman being punished. Does this ducking stool account for the sobbing lady that is seen at the top of Ducking Stool Lane? Now, this lady isn't wet, she hasn't been ducked, but people have seen her turn around and say that she's wearing a white blouse, and on the back of her white blouse are marks coming through and cuts in the blouse and showing blood, as if she's been whipped. Now, I don't know if, look, I know on the plaque it states that the whipping took place on the local stocks. I don't know how long that plaque has been now. These ghost stories of this lady up at the end of the lane have been there since the late 60s. If this information was known about people being whipped there, someone could make up that story. Yeah, someone could make up the story of the lady sitting at the end of the lane, bending over with a whipped back and blood showing through her white blouse. Easy story to make up. But the reports seem to have more side information when you get it coming from people in high standing. One of these is a person that is a member of the church. They are walking down Stool Lane when they hear a lady sobbing. They turn round and see the lady slumped over on the corner of the road, and their initial thought was that somebody has been injured. Now this was broad daylight. There's nothing creepy about it. There's no mist, no chill in the air or anything like that. They just see this lady sobbing, bending over on the corner of the road. Starts walking up to them. The lady turns her back to him, showing again this white blouse that has got gaping slashes across it and blood on the blouse. The gentleman is staggered and he steps back. He takes a deep breath. As he takes that deep breath, the lady in front of him literally just like that and gone. Click of the fingers and just disappears. No fading in and out or anything like that. He said it was like a blink of the eye, she has gone. He goes back and he talks to people in the church about this, and their explanation is that he's seen a lady that was whipped at the local stocks and then later went on to lose her life. Deaths from the stocks and the ducking stool, not really available to read. I'm not sure many people did drown in the ducking stool. Maybe one or two over 400 years that it was used there. No, it was used there for a long time. I think the last ducking stool in England was used in 1809. So from the 1300s to 1809, I'm sure that at some point women been punished for just being arguing or anything like that, may have passed away on a ducking stool. Now another haunted location nearby is the old courthouse. It's a pub on the corner of the grounds before you go into the castle ruins. Now the original building is 13th century and it used to extend over the pathway heading down to the castle. That is where the courthouse was. The actual section that overhung the path is where they used to elect bailiffs and all that sort of stuff. That pub is said to be haunted by medieval figures walking around, lurking around in the dark hours once the pub is shut, but also by a gentleman who's seen wearing very posh clothing, all red, as if he is a person of importance. So yes, this could be a judge, it could be a mayor, it could be a bailiff. Now he is said to be seen haunting that area in the early hours of the morning. We're not talking 1 or 2 a.m, we're talking around about 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, mainly around the time that the sun is coming up. Now milkmen have said they've been walking down that street early hours of the morning. At the corner of their eye, they've seen this figure standing there in a red coat with long blonde hair with gold buttons down the coat, and when they've looked back he has disappeared. These reports happen again and again over the centuries. That part of the building was pulled down in 1888, and it seems from that moment on, whoever haunted that area up there now haunts the ground below, which I find quite interesting that they've actually come down a level and not carried on haunting across the walkway. You'd imagine that he'd be floating up in the area if that's where he originally haunted. One of the strange things you're going to see in Christchurch is the front part of a mausoleum set out in the middle of a grassed area. This belonged to a lady called Mrs. Perkins. She had a fear of being buried alive. So she was buried standing up and the casket was left open, and that there was a bell that was on a string that led from her coffin up to Christchurch that she could ring if she woke up and was buried. Now when she passed away, her husband honoured her wishes and he had this constructed. When he died, they removed it from the original site, buried her in the churchyard with him, and demolished the mausoleum, left the front section and moved it to this area. No wonder she is said to haunt the streets of Christchurch, not just round the mausoleum front that is left there today, but all the streets of Christchurch. Mrs. Perkins is said to be haunting, looking for revenge on the people that tore down the mausoleum. She's not at rest anymore. Apparently, she is meant to be one of the most scariest ghosts you're ever going to see. That when she's seen, she's meant to run at people and pass through them. Again, she's obviously looking for revenge and a very angry ghost. But now we come to monks and smuggling. So it's no surprise that monks and smuggling went together hand in hand. And this area of the south coast was the playground of smugglers for hundreds of years. Now, smugglers would be, well, let's face it, it's probably not the safest job in the world. And from time to time, smugglers would lose their life and they would be buried in the church, the Priory. And it seems that the monks were more than happy to bury these smugglers in the grounds. Even after that, even once the monks had all gone, it is still said that smugglers were buried on that land. But one of the most famous reports you get in Christchurch, that if you go on any ghost walk, you'll be told that in the graveyard or around the edge of the churchyard, it is reported on some late evenings you can see a group of monks carrying a coffin through that churchyard and heading round to the front of the church. That they are said to be carrying the body of a dead smuggler. Other people have turned around and said it's actually the body of another monk, who is then said to haunt the rest of the churchyard. Now there is another section here. Now if you walk from the tower and where that mausoleum is and you head to the churchyard, before you get to the graveyard, there's a pathway that goes along the river edge. It's currently like a willow archway that goes all the way down, which makes it a little bit more creepy. Now years ago when I went here before, it wasn't like that. That archway wasn't all willowed over and it didn't look as creepy as it does today. It adds to it that when you're walking down now, knowing that people have seen ghosts of smugglers and ghosts of monks walking along that pathway, it just adds to it. Over the years, people have said they're walking their dogs along that river when the dog has stopped, froze and started to growl, and when they've looked up, they've either seen a monk or somebody from the past that is looking really sort of dirty and scruffy, and then they fade away. One of the best reports we have of this is Mrs. Turpin's with her daughter. They are walking along that path in the late September sun when their dog stops dead. Now their dog has never acted like this before. They said it froze stiff as a board. They're trying to pull the dog along, it would not move. They turned around and they looked back up that pathway, and walking towards them, they say they see a full figure of a monk walking down that path. Now first of all, they weren't scared by it. They were shocked to see a monk walking towards them, but it's an old church and things do happen where, as I say before, monks still exist in this world we live in today. We don't see them as common. Like nuns. Now, I mean, I grew up in Stanford and we had the Catholic schools and all that around here and the Catholic churches where nuns would always be seen. And nuns used to come to our school. We used to see nuns everywhere. So, yeah, it wasn't... Do you know what about... Funny thing, when I used to work at the photo labs, right, the film Nuns on the Run come out, and where I was working they had all videos also in the shop. It was in Boots, so we was working in the photo lab, all the videos were out in front of us, and the day that Nuns on the Run come out, all the videos were stacked up. A group of nuns all come in and brought Nuns on the Run, and it was like the last people you'd expect to come and buy Nuns on the Run. And they said they all went to the pictures to see it. Can you imagine going to the pictures to watch Nuns on the Run and all in front of you, the whole seats were all taken up by nuns in habits. I think it's brilliant. But yeah, side story. But getting back to this scary side now. So where are we? The monk is at the end of the pathway. The monk is at the end of the pathway. The dog is frozen solid. They're trying to drag the dog along, and as I say, they're not taking this monk as anything spooky. They can see his face, so it's not a hooded dark space where his head would be. He just looks like a normal monk. The monk gets closer and closer to them. They notice that their dog is now wetting itself. The dog is not moving, it's frozen solid, and now it's weeing, which is completely out of character of this dog. Mrs. Turpin thinks that this is because he's never seen a monk before and he's petrified by the hood and the gown and all that sort of stuff, which is a good explanation. The monk gets closer and closer, then he gets to about 15 foot away from them. They turn around and say that is when they started to notice that the sunlight, the dipping sunlight, could be seen coming through his clothing. He wasn't completely solid. She grabs hold of her daughter, pulls the daughter tight to her. The dog starts growling and barking and actually has started moving this time and coming closer to the owner. So they're all like huddled into a corner. This monk walks straight past them and carries on walking up the pathway. It never fades out, but just carries on walking till it can't be seen anymore. Now I find that a more convincing ghost story than a lot of the ones where people just disappear. This ghost just carried on walking till it couldn't be seen naturally. But at the same time, now they can see light coming through the figure, so it wasn't a solid figure. The description they gave, the monk was about 50 or 60 years old, and his face was very, very drawn in, as if he was undernourished. Okay, so let's talk about the church itself. Now, I'm going to have to look at this to get the name right. Ranulph Flambard decided to replace the old Saxon church with a Norman church. So the church you see there today is mainly a Norman church. But he decided he wanted to build it up on a hill further up the road. He picked the perfect site. They started knocking down parts of the Saxon church and moved all the masonry up to the new location. When the workmen woke up in the morning, the masonry they put up on the hill had all been returned back to the original site. Not only that, some of the bricks they'd knocked down have actually been put back in place. Now there's a beam in this church, and it's called the miraculous beam. It is said that the workmen building the new church were cutting all the wood up of the old Saxon church, and one of the beams was cut too short. The workmen were devastated, and it put a real problem to their job. They finished work for the day, they went away, they come back next morning, and this beam, not only this beam perfectly been mended back together as if it had never been cut before, but it was also installed where it needed to be. The workmen were flabbergasted. They couldn't work out how this had happened. They inspected the beam and turned around and said, yes, it's exactly the same beam that they cut too short the day before, but now the beam had grown overnight and was the perfect length to fit in that spot. No one could answer what had happened, and that is where they say this was a miracle beam. And I say there's a sign in the church for it, and you can walk along and you can see the beam for yourself. I've got video here and some photos of the posters and all that, but this is what they truly believe. They also truly believe that this church is haunted. And even the people that work in there, that are extremely religious, also believe this church is haunted. Now at the far end of the church, you've got the tomb of John Draper. He's said to haunt the area of that pathway leading up to the tomb. He was the last prior of Augustine Priory before it was demolished under Henry VIII, dissolution of monasteries in 1539. Once he died, he was allowed to be buried at that site. People say they see that figure walking down that corridor by his tomb, but also by the Lady Chapel. The Lady Chapel is at the other end, and people say they see the figure of John Draper walking out of that chapel and along the pathway. Amongst others, people have turned around and said that they feel the presence of people praying in that church when it's empty. They can hear the sound of people singing hymns when there's nobody in that church. Now, I've handed to you that Christchurch, the church Priory, is absolutely fantastic. It is the longest parish church in England, and it is stunning. You walk along there, you feel like you're walking for miles, and you are walking over all the tomb slabs and everything like that. And yeah, it gets you. You're walking through so much history. It is just an absolutely fantastic place. Then you've got other things about that church that, when you dig into the history of it, you find out that this church was one of the main culprits in smuggling in Dorset, and that everyone that was involved in that church were something to do with smuggling. What you can do there, you can go up into the towers and go up into the Loft Museum. You can look around the Loft Museum, but when you come down another tower, a different one. And on the side that faces the Isle of Wight, you can see right over, there's a little window in that tower. And to demonstrate, they've got a candle there today. But from that window, they would put a candle in that window when it is safe for smugglers to bring their stuff up to the church, for it to be hidden in the church cellars and taken over to the priories. This is not uncommon. A lot of churches, even in Fobbing, everywhere I go, the church is involved in smuggling. So no wonder we've got so many smugglers that have been buried in that churchyard, and why you get so many smugglers seen walking around there as ghosts. So yeah, as I say, it's just one of those things with churches and smugglers. But it's also where we get the other ghost of the smuggler that is seen right outside the front of the church. Now he's seen apparently carrying barrels up that path to the church, and there's only a few reports of him, but I know if you go on the ghost walks or you go on a paranormal evening around the area, they will point his figure out to you, that where he's meant to walk along the path around the front of the church to take the barrels into the church. So again, one of those well reported ghost stories. But let's go back up to the very top of that church in the loft area. Now this loft area used to be a school, and I say we had a wonderful tour guide up there, and he told me all about that area up there and about how it was used as a school, and the children who went to that school, if they needed the loo, they had to go all the way down the tower, past that candle, out of the church and across to another building on the other side of the church to use the toilet. So yeah, it's a long trip to go away. But that is how we come talking about the Ragged School, how the church and Bernardo's and all that used to work together, but also about the strange events that happen in that loft area. The guide who was showing us around, as I said in the previous video, he was a medium, and he was telling us about the children's coffin that is up there. Now I already knew that this children's coffin is said to be haunted, that people would feel very drawn to that coffin, and he told me himself that when he first went up into that building, he was looking around and he was totally drawn to this children's coffin, and when he touched it, it sent like a shock through him. That's not the only person that's ever said that. A lot of people who go up there that make contact with this children's coffin say they feel a strong sense of sorrow going through their body. Now of course that could be psychological. You are touching a children's coffin. A lot of people experience being up in that loft area, not knowing that that coffin was there, and being drawn over into that corner where it is, and then only then realising that that coffin was there, and that was the source of their magnetism to that area. Now there was another strange thing that they did show us, that the lady there that also doing the guided tours opens up a gap on the floor, and you can see the big bolt that holds the chandelier up that hangs down into the Lady Chapel below. And I've tried to take some photos to show you what it was like. And yes, we were making jokes about only fools and horses and the the chandelier and Rodney and Grandad and all that sort of stuff. But those tenants, when they first found that little hatch, they also found a cat's foot in there on top of the ceiling, which is a very bizarre thing to find. Other people have turned around and said that maybe this was to ward off evil spirits. Now, knowing this was a classroom of kids, I could imagine kids doing something like that. But I do know that people that have been in that church late at night and nobody's up in that loft area have turned around and said that they can hear footsteps running around on that floor. I take it with a pinch of salt, because if you're down in that church, that is a very, very high ceiling to hear anybody running across, and it is suspended over the dome of the roof. So that roof would have been a dome, and this has been built, the floor has been built over the dome. But I don't want to call people liars, but people have turned around and said they've heard footsteps along those boards in that room. Now, one last ghost story for you, and this is the ghost of Sir Walter de Pinky. He was executed in the church. He was basically attacked in there and executed in that church. His ghost is said to haunt all over that building and also the grounds outside. If you go on these ghost walks, you'll hear about his ghost being seen over the bridges, over the streams, up in the church towers, and all this, all over the place. You'll see this ghost of Walter de Pinky. I think he's seen a lot because tour guides like saying his name because it's quite catchy. But, you know, the poor guy did get executed in 1147, so at least he's remembered for something, even if it was for his name. But yes, his ghost is meant to haunt the grounds of that priory, but also the old Norman house. Now, the Norman house is over the other side of the priory. It's one of the last parts of the whole place that is still standing. A lot of it is just rubble, but you've got the Norman pump house that you go through when you walk along the stream, and you get to this building. Not only is the Pinky's ghost seen in that building, but a lot of other Norman ghosts are reported there as well. Apparently, on quiet winter days, people that have been over there walking their dogs around the area hear the voice of children in that house, and they've gone over there and looked around and they can't see no children. Other people have turned around and said that they smell a very strong sense of incense burning around that area. This has also been said to be smelled on the other side of the church and up in that tower or the castle ruins, the strong smell of incense. But mainly around that Norman house, that Norman building. Okay, well, I've been filming for over an hour and a half, and I don't know how much usable footage I have, so I could go on. I've got loads. I say, the smuggling section in this book has got no ghost stories in it, by the way. This is just the history of Christchurch. My wife got me this by us down there. It's absolutely brilliant. Smuggling, it was just rife down there. There's probably more smugglers here than there was in Hastings and Dover. I think because there's so many little inlets there that really led itself to smuggling of goods. It was perfect location for it. So no wonder there's a lot of ghosts of smugglers around now. Anyway, I hope you like this video, and if you do, don't forget we've got Buy Me a Coffee, we've got super thanks you can do. You can like it, subscribe. Don't forget to give it a bit of a hype if you've got any hypes left. And no, I still haven't found out. Someone's helping me. One of you was helping me the other day, trying to work out why I can't hype videos on my phone. And it just seems that my Android system don't work at the moment for that. Hopefully an upgrade will do that, so I'll have to do that. But anyway, thank you. As you can tell, my voice is going. Talking this length of time just drains my throat. But thank you, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Oh, 20 years ago, it wasn't.